All right. Good morning, everybody. I have the pleasure to interview the beautiful Ellen Yin this morning. She is the founder and CEO of Ellen Yin Media, as well as her award-winning podcast, Cubicle to CEO. So, Ellen, welcome.
Hi, Tira. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Yes, absolutely. So, tell us first off just a little bit about you.
Sure. There's so many things, but in terms of business, I've been in business for about 3 years now, and I help service providers attract consistent clients and make their first $10,000 month without needing a large audience or posting every day. So that's my main focus. That's what we do inside my membership, Cubicle to CEO. And I have a suite of other complementary products like my $27 course, #hacks, that feeds into that too. But Thank you. But my passion project, like you mentioned, is the podcast. So it's the same name, Cubicle to CEO, and we interview top business leaders and successful entrepreneurs on how they got to where they are. And we release new episodes every Monday. So the show just turned a year old, which was a pretty exciting milestone for us. But that's kind of the 30-second runaround of what I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, um, did you ever, think as you were going through this that you were gonna even have a podcast? Like, how did that become about?
So with the podcast, I wanted to do a podcast for a while, but I kept procrastinating like many people do because of tech overwhelm. And I was like, oh, I just have so much to plan out. But I actually ended up meeting my friend Chase Tuning in actually we were both in Austin for this event at the same time. And he is a amazing podcaster. I mean, his show has, gotten over 1 million downloads. He's been in this industry for a really long time. And so he was like, let's get your show up and running in 30 days. And so I was like, okay, with someone's guidance and accountability, I know I can do this. So I actually ended up hiring him and his team to help me launch my show last July. And we did it, in less than a month. And he made it so easy. So that's how it actually got off the ground. But in terms of the idea of podcasting, growing up, I loved interviewing people. My mom has like these old home videotapes where I'm interviewing like my stuffed animals and like talking to literally no one. But when I went to college originally, I was a broadcast journalism major and I wanted to work in Hollywood and be a red carpet correspondent or have a show that I could host on TV. And so interviewing people has always been something that I've really enjoyed, even though that's not the route that I ended up going. So this kind of felt like a really cool platform that I could still get to, utilize that while providing a platform to feature some amazing, amazing people.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, it still kind of led you to getting to do something that you really love to do.
Yeah, it's fun.
Okay, so then you started your podcast, and then was that kind of the beginning of you launching your business, or how did that happen? Was that something that you were like looking to do, or did it just kind of, happen along, like with the steps that you were taking to just kind of like fall into that for you, or?
Yeah. So the podcast actually came, I'm trying to think, over a year and a half probably after I started my business. So it definitely wasn't at the same time. I actually started my business as an accidental entrepreneur. So I feel like a lot of people can relate to that statement because, it wasn't this well mapped out strategic plan by any means. I quit my corporate job about like right at the very end of 2017, and I didn't have a backup plan. So, I kind of took a big risk, took a big leap. I was like, I'll just figure it out. And I actually was planning to apply for more like corporate jobs in a different city and relocate. But what ended up happening was, ironically, it was actually an old coworker at the job that I just left who reached out and said, "Hey, I heard that you know some things about Instagram and our coffee shop. Our Instagram is really new. We don't really know how to attract our customers and really get it out there. And could you help us with that?" And so it was this $300 project that I was so excited to do. I was like, yes, of course, like that's so fun. And I get to help you in your business. And once I signed that first client, I realized, hey, if I did this one time, I can do it again, right? And I can do it bigger and I can do it better each time. And so I just decided to like lean into this new path, try it out, see where it went. And it grew very, very quickly. So, within our first year, that one little client, it had become a six-figure business and agency.
Wow, that's incredible.
Thank you.
So, would you say that you help even somebody that maybe is, looking for a plan B option as far as, kind of going from the corporate world to moving into entrepreneurship, kind of, you know, trying to figure out what their brand is and you helping them do that because they wouldn't have a lot of followers at that time?
Yeah, I love the whole side hustle world. Those yes, absolutely. So my favorite thing to do is to work with people to help them monetize their existing skill sets, because everybody, whether you think you do or you don't, you have natural gifts and skills that come so second nature to you that you don't even view them as something that anyone else would find value in. But I often ask people, like, what are you the go-to person for in your circle of friends and your professional network? What kinds of questions do you get asked all the time? And it doesn't have to be business related, right? Like some people are like, oh, anytime my friend has a date, they call me, they FaceTime me and they're like, what do you think of my outfit? Or anytime someone gets a new puppy, they'll call me because they need help, like, house training the dog. Those things are so second nature to some people that it's like, well, duh, like, why would anyone pay me for this? But it's not. I mean, both of those things, I'm not that person. You should ask for either of those things. So it's, it's kind of cool to go through that process with people and that light bulb moment when they realize, oh, wow, like I have a gift, I have information, I have experience, I have skills that I didn't even realize other people really struggle with and that I could help them with. And then helping them turn that into a service, really refining that and getting them their first client or next 10 clients, right? That's what we really do in my membership, Cubicle to CEO, through my consistent clients cash flow system. And it's been really cool because, like, even for example, we had a new member join us maybe like 3 months ago. And I remember still her sending me a message on the day that she joined our membership, because she actually later that day walked into her boss's office and put in her 2 weeks notice and was like, I'm doing it. I'm taking the leap into entrepreneurship. And within 3 months, she had made her first $5,000 month in business. So, I mean, just
Wow.
it's incredible to really see how quickly things can change in your life. And I'm not saying that every single person, that's their story and that's their journey, right? But
Right.
it's cool to see what's possible and to really think about what are my alternate options or different things I can add to my existing career that would really bring me a lot of joy and purpose.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think sometimes, like you said, people, forget those, special, talents and quirks that they, have because it comes second nature. So that's awesome. Well, so what is something that for you, you find yourself, like consistently day to day, like what is something that helps you stay like on routine and because you're busy, right? You're the founder of your business, and you have all these clients. Like, what is something that helps you continue that to where you don't have? I mean, obviously, it's something that you love to do. So, but sometimes we all get burnt out. So what is that for you?
I'm so glad you brought this up, Tiara, because we actually just this past week released an episode on our podcast all about burnout. So perfect timing. But I'm definitely not an expert on burnout. I have my own thoughts about, balance and whatnot. In my opinion, balance is not it's elusive. It's like this myth that people have created that somehow everything in your life can have equal priority, and it can't. Just like by definition it can't. And so in my opinion, trying to chase balance, you actually become more imbalanced because you're constantly stressing out about how you're not doing enough of really anything anywhere. So the way I approach it instead is really looking at, or really understanding, I should say, that in different seasons of your life, different things are going to have priority in your life, and to be okay with that. And as long as you clearly understand with yourself and the relationships that are important to you, hey, like these are my priorities right now, not forever, but maybe for the next 3 months, 6 months, 3 years, who knows? And and once you commit to that, being okay with saying no to anything else that doesn't fit in those priorities in that season of life. So that's kind of my approach there. But in terms of burnout, Amanda Daly, who was our guest on the podcast episode, she has been working in this world of helping entrepreneurs avoid burnout for years and years and years. So she could say so much more than I could on the subject. So if you guys are interested in that topic, definitely, if you just search Cubicle the CEO on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, she's like the most recent episode. And I've gotten so many messages this week from people who aren't even entrepreneurs, but who are like, oh, this really helped me just even in my personal life, feeling exhausted and burned out and stretched in too many places, which I think a lot of people are feeling right now, just with the uncertainty and chaos of the current, world circumstances.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. I love that. So do you find yourself, like, what do you do for, like, your self-love, like, routines? Do you have certain routines that you do daily that kind of, help you either get into, the mode for the day or to be able to, like, tackle your day?
I love this question. It's not something like very specific that I do every single day. I think I have different forms of self-care that I really enjoy. One of them, this is like so nerdy, but honestly, one of my favorite things in the world is just like sitting out on a deck somewhere, like, well, in my backyard right now. Usually, like if quarantine was to happen, maybe somewhere else, but and just reading a good book. Like honestly, just letting my mind get lost in another world that is not mine is like amazing. So I love doing that. I love baths and bath bombs. Those are really awesome too. I love like long walks, and I used to be like, if you met me 2 years ago, or maybe more 3 years ago now, but if you met me like 3 years ago, I was really, really into lifting and fitness. That's actually what my degree is exercise science. And when I first started this whole online journey, that's what I was doing. Like everything I posted was about fitness. So it was a very, again, different stage, different season of my life. But still, like being in the gym, I don't go as often as I used to, but when you have a really good lift day, it's super therapeutic. And so I think self-care is fluid, and it's not necessarily something that has to be the same every day. And it also, I feel like some people get overwhelmed because they feel like I need to build a routine that's like XYZ step in an hour long or whatever it is. But I think it can be just as simple as 5 minutes, really doing something that you enjoy, or even as simple as like washing your face. Like I love my skincare routine. Like that's also very relaxing to me.
I like that. Yeah, because I think sometimes, people put too much pressure on themselves to be like, oh, I have to get this done. But then we're supposed to be focusing on self-love, and then it just turns into more stress. It's like doing the opposite of what we intended it. And so if it's just flowing natural and you're doing something for you that you love, then that's, more so the importance of that.
Yeah.
Well, so you mentioned that you have a degree in exercise science and that you were posting stuff with, like everything fitness.
Mm-hmm.
How did that, like you go from that to where you are now? Like, where was that shift in kind of figuring out for you what, was meant, like, this is what you were meant to do? How did that shift happen?
Um, oh my goodness, I'm trying to think. You know, my entire life, and I mean, I didn't, it's not like I like had this idea in my head that I, follow this, but looking back on everything I've done in my life so far, I think the recurring theme is that I easily pivot and I lean into my curiosities, and that's really it. It's like it's not like when I was in fitness I had this idea that, oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and now I'm going to do this. It was more that even with fitness, right? In high school, in high school I danced, I was on dance team, I was on tennis team, so I was active, but I knew nothing, like literally nothing about fitness, nothing about nutrition or proper exercise, any of that stuff. And so the reason I even got into fitness was because of my friend Emily, who I met in college when I was working, at the movie theater. We were working at the movie theater together, and she got me into lifting the whole world of like bodybuilding. And again, that was just something that like intrigued my curiosity. And I was like, okay, like, let's explore this. Like, let's get it more into this. And for all of college and, a couple years after, that was my whole life. Like, I was probably in the gym like 6 days a week. I really loved it. I even switched my degree and, was learning everything about it. And what's interesting is even in that moment, so when I was at USC in LA, that's when I had my broadcast journalism major. That was freshman year, and I actually ended up transferring home to Oregon State because, long story short, I would have ended up in like a massive amount of debt if I had stayed there. And being at Oregon State, I was able to graduate debt free, and that was really important to me. So
Yeah.
I transferred home, and even in that moment when I switched to my degree, like people ask me all the time, why the heck did you get an exercise science degree if everything you've done post college has been in like marketing and PR and whatnot? And I remember senior year sitting in our, I don't even know what the class is called, like a practicum where you had to go around the room and say like, okay, after graduation, this is what I'm going to do with my degree. And I remember everybody else around me was like, I'm going to be a personal trainer. I'm going to go into physical therapy. I'm going to be a cardiologist. And then it was like me. And I was like, I'm not going to do anything in this field. And people were like, why are you even here? But even in college, I knew that I wasn't actually going to utilize my degree professionally. It was just a huge passion of mine. And again, I just like leaned into my curiosities and I was like, that's enough. Like I know that it's not necessarily about the degree. Having a degree helps, but you can learn new skill sets. And if I've learned anything in life, it's when you invest into your mindset and your skill sets. And more importantly, I think most importantly, your network of people, those connections, those relationships, that has been what has influenced my career and my business journey the most. And so in terms of the pivot from fitness to entrepreneurship, sorry, that was like a long-winded pivot.
No, yeah, I loved that.
Um,
I mean,
there wasn't like an exact dividing line. It was just, again, something piqued my interest. When I was in college, I came across this fitness company in Colorado and I messaged them on Instagram and I was like, hey, I noticed that your blog isn't like fully optimized. Can I do some work for you for free? Can I give you free work for 3 months and see what you think? And that ended up turning into my first full-time job right out of college. So that's kind of how I got into the whole marketing PR world, but it wasn't smooth and it wasn't planned. It was just, leaning into my curiosities.
I love that. And that kind of, I remember, when I came across you, I was reading one of the leadership lessons that you said that you have learned, and it's never stop learning, pivot when it's not your turn yet, and persist until it is. Your path doesn't change, persist until something, happens. And so
Yeah.
I didn't know if you wanted to take, a little bit of time to kind of share with our listeners about that. I know that you did just a little bit, and that's what it reminded me of that.
Thank you so much. So that line, pivot and persist, has really become like my motto, my theme, whatever, my branding. But it actually that line came from a speech that I made. It was actually my first time talking on stage. It was at Spark Portland, which is this amazing personal growth and development experience my friend Rachel O'Rourke created. And so I remember being on stage, like in front of like hundreds of these women. I was so scared because it was my first time. But the analogy that I used that day to explain this idea of pivot and persist is, I mean, it's so silly, but have you ever seen Monsters, Inc.?
Yes.
Okay. So you know how like in the movie, there's that one scene, I think at the very end of the movie where they're either trying to find Boo or I can't remember what they're trying to do, but there's, just like all these doors, like they're in a huge like warehouse and there's like doors and doors and doors and they're just like revolving like on the assembly line.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, I was like, I feel like life is like that in a lot of ways where you open a bunch of doors sometimes and you're like, oh, okay, this is going to be really awesome. And then maybe the door doesn't open, or you open the door and there's a monster there instead of Boo or, or Sully or Mike or whatever. And instead of letting that discourage you and be like, oh, well, I'm just not meant to, do this, or I'm just not meant to be successful. I'm not meant to have that life or to have the things that I really believe in, like my dreams. I really look at it as when you have those roadblocks, it's okay to persist or to pivot, right? Try something different, try a different approach. And when it is meant to be your turn, that door will open and what's behind it is going to be exactly what you want. But sometimes when you open the doors that don't have exactly what you want or need behind it, it really is a gift, because that information, that clarity that you get is still valuable. Like if you, for example, if you went to a job that you absolutely detested and you worked in it for 2 years and you're like, well, that was a waste of my life for 2 years, but it totally wasn't, because the people that you met in that job, first off, you never know where those relationships could go. You never know 10 years down the line who those people might be or know or are doing that you could somehow, have a connection with again. But furthermore, by understanding and being in that job for 2 years and realizing that you really hated it, you gathered new information. I look at everything as like gathering data, gathering information, and you now know, okay, these are the things I really dislike doing. These are the leaders I really dislike working under or being around or whatever it is. And here's why. And now you have wisdom for your next step. And that's not a waste. It's a gift. And so that's kind of my whole perspective on that.
I really appreciate that, especially like I'm a really positive person. And so I can relate to that. Whereas, like taking the positive out of even the most negative situations. And you're right, everything that you do end up doing, you're learning from it, to be able to apply that to the next, chapter of your life.
Yes.
Well, so if, for our listeners, I mentioned, or you mentioned that you all of a sudden were, finding yourself even speaking in public, maybe some people are thinking like, oh, it would be really great to be able to pursue this, but maybe the fear of success, that comes along with it, like, oh, I can't do public speaking, I can't do these things. How did you kind of overcome that?
One of the things I've realized is imposter syndrome is something that everyone struggles with, but it actually gets bigger the more success, quote unquote, you find. A lot of people think, oh, well, when I'm a beginner, I have a lot of imposter syndrome, but those people who like, when you like idolize other people and you're like, oh, well, they've already got it figured it out and, they're doing awesome, da, 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 da. No, I feel like it's actually the opposite. Like every time I have grown in life or in business, when I look back, like who I was 6 months ago, 9 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, I'm like, oh man, like when you are in the beginning stages, you have so much ignorance, not in like a you're ignorant type of way, but just simply because you're new to it, you don't know what you don't know. So all you see is like this little piece of it's like you only know your neighborhood, but you don't even realize there's a world or a universe out there. And the more that you walk around and like realize the world is much bigger than you think it is, the more you start to become aware of things that you're like, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing you could know or that you should know. And so imposter syndrome, I just want to encourage people first and foremost that everybody has it. And it's not like somehow someday in your life, you just have it all figured out and nothing ever scares you again. But I will say that something that's really helped me with overcoming fears is actually just investing a lot of time in getting to know my brain better, which I know sounds really weird, but it's this I really believe that if you can understand why you think the way that you do and how to actually actively change it, it makes a huge difference in your life. And so, one of the models I learned recently that has really impacted my life is Brooke Castillo's. I don't know what she actually calls it, but it's the CTFAR model. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't think so.
Okay.
What did you say it was?
CTFAR.
Okay.
So just a quick rundown for those who are not familiar. CTFAR stands for circumstance, thought, feeling, action, and result. And the idea behind it is your circumstances are totally outside of your control, right? Like I don't know, if a tree fell on your car, you didn't do that and you couldn't have stopped it because you don't know. But the rest of those things, the thought, the feeling, the action, and the result are directly within your control if you care to actually control them. And so what has made a huge difference is when I feel anything, when I'm like, I feel insecure, I feel scared, I feel overwhelmed, especially people who are like, I'm overwhelmed. It's like, okay, but that's a choice. Like you're choosing to feel overwhelmed. So what you do is if you have this negative feeling that you feel like is really holding you back, write that feeling down and then try to trace it back up and be like, okay, what is the thought that is producing this feeling? And an example that I gave my students in my membership recently was we looked at the same situation from two different angles. So for example, I was like, okay, let's pretend that were in your business this month and you were like, I want to get 5 clients this month. That was your goal. And let's say at the end of the month, you talked to maybe like 10 people and you only got 1 client, right? So that same circumstance could produce 2 vastly different feelings in 2 different people. One person could be like, I suck. This totally doesn't work. I'm not good enough. This won't work for me. And I feel very discouraged and frustrated. Another person could feel total feelings of elation and excitement on the same circumstance. And if they trace it back to their thoughts, then the person who's excited, their thought might be, okay, I'm so excited that this person saw value in the work that I do. And if I have signed 1 client, I can totally duplicate this process and sign another client. Like I already know the path to do it. So all I have to do is repeat it. That thought produces feelings of excitement. The other person, their thought is, okay, if someone rejected me once, everyone will reject me. Therefore, I suck at this and I'm exhausted and frustrated and I can't do this. So those thoughts produce different feelings. And if you can change your thought in life, it will change your feeling. And if you feel differently about something, your action is going to look different and your results will therefore change. So the person who is like frustrated and is like, well, I suck at everything, their action, the action that's produced from that is they're going to stop showing up because they're afraid. They're like, okay, those 10 people rejected me because only 1 person signed up and became my client. So I'm now going to stop trying to show up and share my business because I know that people are just going to reject me. So what is the point? And so that action is a self-fulfilling prophecy and their business won't grow because they've already decided it won't grow. And then the other person who's like, oh, I've done it once, I can do it again and again and again. Their action is like, now let me go talk to 50 more people. I'm so excited about this. I can't wait to help the people that I'm meant to help. And their business is going to skyrocket because their action produced a totally different result. And so that again was like very long-winded, but I think it helps explain like how you can change the way that you look at things in your life.
Yeah. And I mean, from that, it really, I like that you kind of went more in depth because it really shows really change direction, that you take, for having that, positivity or thinking like, okay, yes, if I did this, I can do it again and again. And, really staying in the fight and pursuing it is what is going to lead to that success in that area, versus, having that negative energy that you just keep bringing upon yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really cool actually, Tara, because who was it? I came across this awesome post the other day. I remember. It was Jen Casey, she's a brain-based coach. So I'm like huge nerd, right? So anything psychology, human behavior, I'm like, yes, give me that. I want to learn it because it's so fascinating to me. But she was talking to this one person and they were like, I'm just not confident. Like I am totally unconfident and I don't know how to change that. And they were having this conversation and I don't remember exactly what she said because I'm not a brain coach. So I'm going to totally butcher it. But basically what it ended on was she was like, actually, that's not true. You are super confident. You're super confident that you are not confident. Like you have 100% confidence that you are not confident. And so she was like, it's not that you don't know how to practice confidence or have confidence. You just choose to place all of your confidence in a negative thing, and your brain and your beliefs and your actions back it up 100%. You're like, I 100% back the fact that I'm not confident, and I'm going to show you why that is true in all facets of my life. But she's like, it's not that you don't have the ability to be confident. You just have to shift where you place that confidence. And I was like, oh my God, that's so good. That's so true. Like people never think about it that way, but be really careful anytime you use the words like always or never, like, oh, no one ever is interested in what I do. Anytime someone says that, I'm like, no one ever, not one person, not your best friend, not your mom, not anyone ever has been interested, because our brains tend to we want to hold on to like whatever's most negative and just put a blanket statement around things. But when we really back up, I'm like, no, that's not true. Like not no one ever, maybe one or two people said that they weren't interested. That doesn't mean everyone. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, that's so awesome. I love that. And that kind of reminds me of like when you were talking about that, the affirmations, why that can be so, valuable for somebody to do when they're feeling maybe, not so confident, kind of really shifting their mindset to where, they start to speak that for themselves.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
awesome.
No, 100%. Yeah. Be careful of the words you say to yourself because they really have a much larger impact than you would imagine.
I agree for sure. Well, as we sort of finish up here today, is there anything that you kind of have on your heart that you would kind of like to leave us with, or share about it with us?
Ooh, that's so hard. When your mind goes blank and you're like, I have no thoughts in my head.
It's kind of a really open-ended question. That's kind of my fault.
No, you're totally fine. I love questions that make you think. I'm trying to think if there's anything recent that I've talked about that I find really important. I mean, I really think it's this idea of ownership in your life. I think a lot of times people, myself included, we always want to pretend like nothing that happens in our life is within our control. Like we like sit in this chair of like, okay, everything just happens to us, you know? But I think that for anyone listening, if you're not 100% excited about the path that your life is going right now, or you want to change something about it, realize that a lot of my favorite opportunities that have happened in my life are things that didn't exist. It wasn't like something that was waiting there for me, but I just went and created it. Like, so even like a more tangible example I can give you is like even my friend Rachel that I, brought up earlier, who I spoke at her event. She had applied to be a speaker at so many different events, and people kept telling her, well, you're not ready yet because you don't have any experience speaking. And it was kind of like one of those chicken and the egg situations where it's like, you need experience to have a job, but you need a job to have experience. So how do you get around that? And so she's like, okay, well, if no one will let me speak on their stage because I haven't spoken on a stage, well, I'll just create my own damn stage. And so she was like, fine. And so she just went out and created that opportunity and said, you know what? I'm going to build my own stage, not physically, but like I'm going to find a venue. This was a couple years ago, and I'm going to invite people to show up and share their story, and I'm going to share my story, and we're all going to be speakers, and we'll have speaking experience because I created this for myself. And it's amazing to see how much her journey has grown or changed since then. But just realize that a lot of the things that feel outside of your control, if you really want something, just go create it. So that's my ending thought.
Wow, I love that. Oh, amazing. Well, I appreciate you so much for coming on and taking time to share this. It's been so valuable. And for everybody, I will post how to connect with Ellen in the comment section. And that way you can reach out to her. Definitely go check out her podcast and check out her program. I think that it's definitely beneficial to really take a look at, and Ellen is here to help you really realize what, those talents are for you to be able to pursue something you're already good at, and do something that you love to do. So thank you so much, Ellen.
Thank you so much, Tiara. This was a blast. I really appreciate it.
Yes, you're welcome. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.